Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 239th edition of the Frank and Stan Weekly Chat. And for those of you watching on YouTube on video, you'll see that we're joined by a gentleman called Alex Howarth at the bottom of the screen. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Frank. You okay?
Yeah, we're very well. Thank you for joining us. I think you're going to bring a slightly different perspective to our chat, which is always great, because we can always get stuck in these little rabbit holes of ours. So I think what we're looking for is a fresh perspective on stuff, and I think you'll bring that.
Right.
We'll let Alex do a little intro in a minute, but we'll go to Stan, see how he's feeling today. How are you, Stan?
I'm okay. I've got a cough, so I'll use the mute button should I go into a coughing fit. So if I'm red-faced and bouncing up and down, but it's silent, it's just a. If I fall over, then it's time to ring for some help.
I
Okay.
tell you what, though, Stan, I'm meeting you in a couple of hours, aren't I?
I know.
I
Yeah.
know, and I'm worried now that I'm going to catch some dreaded lurgy. But I had my flu jab yesterday, so
This started straight after my
did
flu.
it.
Yeah.
Well, just to sort of let people know, while we've been doing this chat since 2020, a number of people contact us because they want to come on the chat, but other people are interested in contacting us for the people that we know, but also what our views are on certain things. And a couple of colleagues contacted us about how they had developed a sort of some software that allowed them to use AI to interrogate the evidence that is available within a school to help the school come to terms with or produce a statement about, a judgment or perhaps an indication, sort of the evidence that's available in terms of how they would create a self-evaluation of their effectiveness. So we're actually meeting at lunchtime today with colleagues who did such a thing and reached out to us. So it's not just for us, Stan, is it, the benefit of doing these weekly
No,
chats and
no.
meeting people like Alex, but it's also there's a lot of other stuff that's going on around it. So it's sort of like a little bit of an ecosystem around these Frankenstein chats.
I think we should point out this is a very rare occasion where I knew Alex before you knew Alex.
Correct.
Quite
Yeah.
often it's your links rather than mine
I
that
know, actually,
make
I do feel guilty at times, but I mean, I generally do. But one of the great things is that it does allow you to keep in contact with colleagues that perhaps you would have lost contact with.
yeah.
So, yeah. But anyway, Alex, who are you for the world out there? Why are
Well,
you here?
I suppose I know both gentlemen because act in a professional capacity for both of you, and you're for you both. So I'm a partner in an accountancy firm over in Bolton, with two offices, Bolton, Blackburn, about 120 staff between us, and yeah, I'd like to think I'm approachable and personable rather than a traditional accountant, which you might have envisaged 20, 30 years ago, but the profession's moved on a bit since then.
Well, I always like the fact when I meet Alex online, he's always tends to have a cricket ball in his hand. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's on your table, but yeah. But you're a blended family, so you've got children from your marriage and from a former marriage. So how many children are there altogether?
so there's three in the household. There's my two, Darcy and Elsie, and my partner Sophie's little girl Mika. So all girls in our house. So
Right.
it's going to be an interesting time over the next 10, 15 years as they grow up.
So
But
how old are they, Alex?
they're 4, 6, and 8.
Right, that's great.
So nice
Um,
ages, and the youngest has just started at the same school as my two, so they all go to the same school, so that's nice.
oh, that's handy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us.
problem.
As you know, the way we do this is we go to Stan for what's caught his eye this week. I never know whether it's caught his eye or caught his eyes. I'm not quite sure. But anyway,
Got
it's
one.
what's caught his eye. Okay, Stan, what's in your inbox there?
Well, a colleague of mine has forensically gone through the framework and sends us
This
little
is the Ofsted framework, isn't
Ofsted
it?
framework. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, and I apologise for it being Ofsted again, but I was really interested in the case sampling example that they've given for all schools, where it suggests that the advisors should concentrate with a group of children. Ask the school to provide a list of pupils who are disadvantaged
have SEND, are known or were previously known to the children's social care, or face other barriers. Explain what you'll do with this list of approximately 6 pupils for case sampling. Make sure you have a representative sample, always including, and that's in black, bold, always including a child with an educational healthcare plan, a looked after child, a child known or previously known to social care, a child who receives pupil premium from, and a child from another group that the school have identified as being significant to the context that they work in. So we're choosing 6 children and we've got a prescriptive list of what they must be. And what worries me is that it then says keep your focus on these pupils' experiences when they're doing the rest of the inspection. And it
Going to be
strikes
tracked
me,
down, aren't they?
yeah, but
They're gonna have a sort of like a little
it's
beacon on their head
might
saying,
as well have
"I'm one of
badges.
those 6," you know.
Yeah, I'm wearing my badge that says I'm known to social services. It, what worries me is that skews such a prescriptive decision,
Excuse.
changes
Yeah.
the view that inspectors have when they're looking at something. Because if you're concentrating only on these 6 children, when you're looking at what experiences, what the curriculum does, how it supports it, you miss. You might be in a school with 1,000 pupils, and you're concentrating on a group of 6, and their experience might be different from the 900 and odd other
Yeah.
pupils, and you get a skewed view. And I just worry. I mean, I saw this myself in when we did some research in America on NQTs, where the NQTs had to do a portfolio of 3 pupils. And what happened was those 3 pupils got excellent support through the year. Their progress and everything was fantastic, but the rest of the class were anywhere near that.
Mm.
And the other thing I suspect, and I certainly would do, I'd already be selecting as a school leader my 6, probably 10 children, and I'd want to know what their progress was, blah 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 blah. But I'd also want to know what what they think their experience is like,
Mm.
because that's what the inspectors are going to ask about, not what I can see, what I'm talking about, but how do you feel about it? And it's difficult to know how a child with SEN is going to respond to a question that says, and how are you supported? Or what work do you do? Or what happens if you can't do your work? Or how do you physically get around the building?
Mm.
Those are questions that are very difficult to predict. And yet, according to this, that could be a crucial question to the outcome of the inspection.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit bring it into your world, Alex. It's a bit like of all your clients, in all, I mean, the regulatory body that oversees your work,
Mm.
just coming in and chat, asking you to identify 6 clients who you think they ought to look at.
Yeah.
And clearly, what you're going to do is, well, you're a very honest, sort of want to you treat it as a purely professional sort of discussion, but you'd be very selective, I suspect, about the clients that you'd want to put in front of those regulators. Um, you know, the key element is how long have you known the client? How long has that child been at the school? There's
Mm.
nothing about that in there. Whether or not that child is a year 7 who's just joined, or whether it's a year 11, a child that came in year 9, missed year 10, come back in year 11. I mean, all of these are factors that will influence the feelings that they have about the quality of those, experiences they've had at the school.
And
Um,
equally, Frank, that we would champion, we would definitely be all for supporting the disadvantaged, and an inspection framework that raises expectations of disadvantaged pupils. That I'm absolutely all for that, but I'm not for doing that at the expense of everybody else in the
yeah,
school. So there's a balance there, and I'm not sure when you make a prescriptive list like this that you allow the inspectors to use their knowledge, experience, and understanding to say, well, yeah, the child I've spoken to has said this, this, and this, but that's not what I get from seeing the school in action.
See, I think this it leaves it open, to be honest, for just a complaint.
Yeah.
So if that is the sort of deep sense, it's a narrow sort of funnel down with a small group of children, and then extrapolating that evidence into the experiences of the majority means that you could say simply, well, you chose the wrong six.
Mm.
There are 1,994 other children in this 2,000 pupil secondary school who had a different experience to that.
Mm.
It is really far too narrow
It
to
goes
be
back.
used as a pillar for evidence gathering.
Remember the first few weeks of the previous framework, where schools were being told, "Oh no, a child didn't understand that the Vikings didn't invent dragons, and therefore your school is unsatisfactory
Yeah.
because the knowledge and you know."
Look at his face.
Yeah, when you could actually argue that the Vikings were the first users of dragons.
I mean, Alex, in your world, a regulatory body, how does it play out for the world of accountancy?
It's getting more and more tiresome, Frank, to be honest. A lot of it at the moment is linked to anti-money laundering, getting to know your clients, understanding your clients, which is fine, and that was done 20 years ago. But now they're bringing it out. Well, you'll have both seen it, won't you? With every company director now has to online verify their ID and upload that to Companies House. It's the first step of digitalisation, I suppose.
Mm.
And we've had quite a few clients kicking off about it, really, because they see it as the first step towards digital ID, and we're not. I don't think we want to get into that one because we've only got half an hour. But it's really emotive for some clients. But the regulation is getting harder and harder, and thankfully, I mean, we as a firm have been through a bit of a transition over the last 10, 15 years from Donnelly's as was maybe 20 staff, and now across both offices we're at maybe 120 staff, 130 staff, something like that. And a lot of the reason for that is, and we're not on our own, a lot of the reason is because the red tape is so difficult to get round and monitor for one person. A sole practitioner now can't really take it on. It's really difficult to A, understand, and B, have the time to. You could spend your full working career just putting policies and procedures in place for a sole practitioner that aren't that are never going to be used. And
Yes.
the most frustrating thing is when you go to the institute for a simple thing like change of name or change of director or whatever you, they're not helpful at all. They're really really tricky to deal with.
So we're not alone in
No,
education,
no.
Alex, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, it was this morning actually, Frank, which probably came at a good timing
Good time
for
for
your
you.
podcast. Something I've long thought about schooling is the teaching of financials to school children, and to me, what really not frustrates me, because I understand that the curriculum has developed over so many years, but when a child leaves school, sometimes they go into further education, but sometimes they get a vocation or an apprenticeship or whatever. And when they go into that apprenticeship, they might need a van, they might need whatever it is, and they'll obviously getting paid for that. They're in the big wide world at 16, and they don't know what a payslip is. They don't know what the difference is between employed, self-employed.
National insurance.
National insurance.
I mean, when
Yeah.
I started work, I thought, what the hell's this?
Yeah,
Who's
you'd
getting
have gone off
this?
to the post office and got your stamp, wouldn't
Yeah.
you? And thankfully, times have moved on. But people don't understand how to check the pay slips. What is a self-employed person? Why do they need to fill in a self-assessment? What's a self-assessment? But even the simple stuff like what's a credit card? Is it a good idea? Payday loans, are they a good idea? These things that impact people's lives, and you see so much on the news about financial stress on people and the stress that it causes and the impact it has on mental health, etc. That to me, it's a huge step forward to seeing even just mortgages on the
Yes.
curriculum. And I've only just scratched the surface, but I personally think that's a huge step forward. I don't know what you two think as educators.
We've said before now, long before now, that practical maths linked to finance is something that should be done. And I have to think back and think, well, I knew through maths things like compound interest and what that meant.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody said, and this is how a mortgage works, and this is how, why this mortgage might be better than this mortgage in the lot. When you're in your 20s and somebody says, do you want to take out a 30-year mortgage or a 20-year mortgage, and the 30-year mortgage will be cheaper, you know, not in your head are you thinking 30 years from now. You just accept whatever it seems to be the cheapest option because it's what I can afford.
Well,
There
yeah, and
used to
even
be, sorry, Alex, go on.
sorry, even items like when they check the pay slips, oh, there's items coming off for pension now because I'm 18 years old and I've been automatically enrolled into a pension. Well, that's lowering my pay. Should I? I don't want that. I'll opt out of that. But what's a pension? What does it mean? Student loan deductions, what do they mean? If I'm going to university and I'm getting £30,000 worth of debt, what does that mean for my earnings going forward? All this, it's got to help, surely.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think we've said this before. We've also said there ought to be a qualification in maths that is a sort of general studies in maths, which covers maths and finance and things that you need, things like reading electricity meter. I know with AI now you probably don't need to read it, but you should be checking it because sometimes things don't work properly. And it's a practical thing. And I think back when I was I think it was in the sixth form, we had general studies as a topic, a lesson, a lecture that you took, and that was the only time people picked up things that weren't in the curriculum, like how do you make an argument and what arguments are false and what language. Let's look at these adverts and the way they try and persuade. That kind of stuff was only done under general studies, and yet, of course, general studies is clearly a lefty soft option for doing O levels or A levels, and we'll get rid of that, like hairdressing or creative arts or anything that we don't particularly, well, in my view, anything that didn't hit Michael Gove's life
Yes.
suddenly wasn't important in schools and wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous though, because at some point during your life, there will be a point where you fill out a self-assessment.
Yeah.
Generally, 7 out of 10 people will have to fill out a self-assessment, and there's this huge stigma about it, and I don't want to get it wrong and all that type of stuff. And it's really, really frustrating. I think that something like this is just only coming in now.
Yeah.
I think it's also really frightening if you're working with HMRC particularly. I was talking to my son who was self-employed for quite a while and did his own assessments and things, and then suddenly before Christmas got a letter from and HMRC saying you owe us £1,800, which he didn't have. So he chased it up and spoke to a second person who said, no, you don't owe that at all. And then so left it. Then got a letter saying, we're now charging you £10 a day on top of this £1,800. Please contact such a body, who said, yes, you absolutely owe this money. And it wasn't when he got to a third person who said, no, not only do you not owe this money, I am now going to take it off your record entirely so that you will not be chased up again. And if the professionals can't get it right, what chance have you got as a young
Well,
person?
Alex will say, well, you just got to go to the top professionals in this world, and actually,
Yeah,
But but we
not,
we
not to
we
dis-
tear our hair out on a daily basis at the incompetency of HMRC.
yeah.
The the amount that it's it's send a letter and think about it later, and
yeah,
that's not the rationale here. It's just that everything's computer driven and nobody's actually checked it before it goes out the door, because 20 years ago you'd march down to the tax office in Bolton or Preston or wherever you'd live, and you'd be able to see someone where they don't exist anymore. And
yeah,
it's scaremongering. The amount of people that must just pay it
Yeah.
yes,
is frightening.
yeah, the
Uh,
tone of it.
Having spoken to and I have to say, a very, very nice lady on Monday about minimum wage, because my company was subject to a support conversation, who did go through the whole thing, whole company, the way we pay, what we pay, and at the end of it said, right, Mr. Johnson, I can tell you, I have no concerns. Everything's in the clear. I'll just send you a closure letter, and this will all be over. Thank you very much. We had a nice conversation. The letter that came, which was clearly had her name at the bottom but wasn't written by her, was another threat.
Yeah.
So you felt supported then, Stan?
Yeah, this time we haven't found any fault, but if we do in the future, we reserve the right to penalise, make public your company, and it's like a blah 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 blah. Thank you. Not, well, that was really interesting, and we're pleased that you're a local company that are meeting all our requirements.
It does feel like this is how Ofsted should report now, isn't it? This time we found
Yeah,
out that it wasn't too
yeah.
bad, but we reserve the right to come back at any time if we have any concerns. Yeah,
I must just qualify my opinion, and generally,
yeah.
when you speak,
We don't want any professional sort of breakdown here, do we?
no, when we speak to somebody at
Yeah,
HMRC,
yeah.
generally speaking, they are helpful, and it's not the staff's fault. It's the systems and the. I mean, we could spend 3 hours on what's wrong with HMRC, but it's not the staff's fault. That generally speaking, they are very helpful.
And just to bring it back to the point that Stan was making about case samples, is that the same can be said about Ofsted inspections. The majority of inspectors who undertake Ofsted inspections are reasonable people, but actually they're being asked to deliver on a framework that creates something that actually is much more challenging, and they will couch in language which is very acceptable when they feed back to you at the end of the inspection. But then you get a report that actually looks quite different, similar to the sort of letter Stan's had. Oh, unfortunately, we ran out of space. We couldn't put all those nice things in. These are the key things you've got to get right next time. So there's a similar sort of pattern emerging here.
It's exactly the same in our ICAW visits, Frank. It's yes, you've done this well. You've done this well. You don't see, and that's the meeting. But then when you get the closure letter, it's we found this and we found this, and
Yeah.
it's never anything major.
Mine gave me advice on keeping records for 6 years, because she asked me, did I keep records back 6 or 7 years? I said, well, we haven't been going that long. So I have records from when we started.
Yeah.
No, they've advised me to keep records of things that didn't exist.
Well, look, what's caught my eye, looking at the clock here, what's caught my eye was really that France's curriculum review, which you referred to, Alex, with regard to mortgages. And the issue for me was around one of the key elements of it. And well, let me put it straight. I wouldn't want to be doing that job. All right. So I think that, this is a woman of immense intellect, and it's an incredibly challenging job to try and pull this together. So I want to position that. But I mean, the issue, one of the first points is that it stresses is that around the importance of oracy. And what we're doing now is based on oracy. It's being able to talk and discuss and listen to other people's views, know how to manage yourself within that environment. And actually, I think that's fundamentally important for the sort of things you've been talking about, Alex, about people going into work used to do a lot of this when I was the CEO of the Co-op Academies Trust. We bring young people, year 10s, into the headquarters. We'd bring as many as 200 in for various weeks work experience, and we'd introduce them to the CEO, and the young person would not know how to introduce themselves to the CEO. And when the CEO would put their right hand out to shake hands, which they were allowed to do, the young person wouldn't know that they had to respond with a right hand. So they would offer their left hand because the right hand will probably be in the pocket or somewhere. You know what I mean? So the thing that isn't just about oracy, that's about preparation for life, isn't it? And about that adjustment to work. So the thing for me on the oracy thing is, yes, it's really important. That's positioned in all of these subjects, everything. It runs right through. But what they haven't done is said, yeah, that's got to be an important part of every subject's assessment and examination. So what it said is, yeah, oracy is really important, but we're going to carry on examining children using the old-fashioned process. They're making it a little bit more AI, but digital. But actually, what they're saying is that unless it can't be done, like a physical education or perhaps a music a bit, or even in modern foreign languages, we would always be wedded. We would always be committed to doing those exams in the way they've been done before. We might reduce 10% of them, to make it more manageable for the children in school, but fundamentally they're not going to change. And for me, that's a big weakness. If you want oracy to be a really important element of all we do, it seems crazy that we don't actually assess it.
And yet, Frank, as you just mentioned there, in modern foreign languages, we do.
Yes.
So it's coming, sorry to interrupt. So it's coming, but it effectively what you're saying is it's a box ticking exercise that it's coming in, but whether it actually happens in practice,
it will only happen. I mean, I can understand why, because this week or last week, the Secretary of State announced that there's going to be in year 8, there's going to be a sort of like a reading test in there. There's been a lot of debate about that, but actually clearly the government is wedded to the idea that schools will only do it if you're going to test it. They'll only take it seriously if you're actually going to test the kids. Now, that's not philosophical, but that's a strategy, isn't it? That's a strategic decision they've made. So here, schools will, the view being that schools will only treat oracy really seriously if you're going to assess it and if you're going to publish those results. So on the one hand, they're saying, we want the test in year 8 because we think that's a really important diagnostic test and it will help teachers. And there's a debate about that. But actually, on the other hand, they're saying oracy is really important, but we're not going to increase the amount of assessing of that we're going to be expecting schools to do. And it's the oracy bit that I think employers, that the first contact they have with a young person, an apprentice or whatever, is how do they manage themselves? How do they say hello? How do they integrate? How can they, not asking for a PhD in the sort of the Roman Empire or something, but how do they actually communicate with fellow workers in the first day?
And that's one thing, Frank, that I will say. I'm not an advocate for private school or state school. I have no strong views either way. But that's one thing that the private schools do really well, is when somebody's been at private school, and obviously we're very close to Bolton School.
Yeah.
You can tell when somebody's been to Bolton School because they come in, they look you in the eyes, and they shake your hand, and they say, "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you, sir." Whereas that sometimes doesn't happen from some of the other schools in Bolton.
One of the things, and we'll finish after this. One of the things that really struck me was when we used to bring students into the Co-op headquarters. There's a beautiful conference centre underneath, which can hold about 200 people. It's got a lovely stage, proper lighting. You've got screens at the back, so you don't have to look at your screen. It's really top whack. And so what we would do is ask students to come and do the work experience, and then do a little short presentation about what they did and what they gained from it. And the stage would be about 3 or 4 meters, no, probably about 5 meters wide. So one year we had some students in from a local private school in with some of our kids, and some of the students in the co-op academy students were really sort of challenging communities, really tough areas. So it's quite interesting the way they meet, and it was really nice because actually the kids are kids, and everyone's accommodating. But actually, what was really significant is when we asked the kids to actually present, we did a dummy run, because we'd bring all the hierarchy into the kids from the state schools all went as far back to the wall as they could get to create a distance between them and the audience. The private school, they were virtually sitting on their laps. They were right at the front of the stage, using their hands, drawing people in, really. And to me, if we're not, if we're about social mobility and giving young people a chance, those skills are really, really important. Really important.
Frank,
Probably more important than being able to write a question about the Roman Empire and getting 3 marks for it in a GCSE history exam. I mean, it is in terms of life chances.
You've got to have real confidence as a teacher to be able to develop oracy and say, I'm giving
Really going for it. Yeah.
I had a year 6 class that had basically the same kind of play area as the reception class had in the classroom, where we set it up as a travel agents with a phone and it was a typewriter and it wasn't a computer. But and what you could do, you could hear, if you wanted to assess it, which I was doing for a project I was doing, you could hear the children develop that oracy, because when they pick the phone up to an imaginary person booking a holiday, they spoke in a completely different language, they spoke in a different way, and they knew how to do that, but didn't do that in everyday chat with the friends in the classroom. And yet it was there, but it was never developed. So it would be, hello, Mrs. Johnson, you're looking for a holiday in such a thing. And these are 11-year-old kids from the middle of Salford. And they're talking in such a refined way
Yes.
that then as soon as they put the phone down and they finish playing, it's
Yeah.
gone completely. I think it's a long time ago when I was at college now, but they talked about restricted
Yeah.
language.
That was that Bernstein work,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
well,
Yeah.
and I think that exists, and I think it exists, and we can develop it if we're confident enough to say, actually, play at age 11 is just as important as play was at 7 and 8.
Yeah. We will get onto cricket now, Alex. All right. Just to finish it off.
The
But
link is play, Frank.
yeah, but I do think though
Talking about
that
playing.
this curriculum review is important because all of us are dependent on a growing economy. And everybody talks, and I think we've said here, great fans of Brexit, not great fans of austerity, whatever it may be. But what we haven't ever done is said, well, hang on, what contribution has education made to the productivity of our economy? How is it influencing our economy? It always seems to be as if it's around the other way. I think we do need to have some soul searching about, well, what are we teaching our children? And are we riddled with bias because this is what we did, therefore this is what we've got to do? So I think that there are some really, for me, some, interesting challenges ahead, because this report, this curriculum report, the government has immediately accepted some, but it's allowed itself time to consider some of these proposals. One of which, the report that came out last night, actually isn't in line with the statement that was made last week by the Secretary of State about the reading test. So you can see a little bit of tension emerging. But anyway, the England cricket team have had a disastrous few weeks in New Zealand in a one-day series. They are now soon to be heading off to Australia for the Ashes, where we have a very poor record, don't we, Alex?
Yeah, once in is it 25 years.
Yeah. So what are your predictions then for the winter, for their summer?
I think it depends on how we start. If we can get something out of Perth, I think we'll do okay. I still think they'll win. The old romantic in me says that we think we'll go down and take the aim, but can I really see it? Probably not. I think 2-2 would be a fair
Well,
reflection.
that would be amazing if it was 2-2. Yeah,
But what what's the point for a draw?
I
So
know.
fingers
I
crossed.
think that and this side hasn't got it in. They don't play for a draw, do they?
No,
Uh,
it's just whether there's any rain around in Sydney
Yeah,
or Melbourne, isn't there? But
yeah,
um, yeah, fingers crossed on that. It's certainly going to be entertaining because they're below their best and we're punching above our weight, I would say.
yes, yeah. My
So
concern is always with that bowling attack, the batting. The fragility of it at the top. But it either kicks off or it falls down. I mean,
I'm
there's.
more bothered about our bowling. I think it's
I,
a bit weak and a bit timid, really. We've got blokes that can bowl fast, but I don't know, just not overawed by some of the bowling attack. I think the batting will be okay, I think.
right.
Fingers
Well,
crossed.
we'll come back to this in January.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we'll be
Anyway,
thrashed
so
by
you,
ourselves.
so you, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Alex, for your time this morning,
No problem.
and for everybody else. Just to say, we have a spotlight edition on Friday, which we're recording with Les Walton, CBE, who is actually I think he's the president or CEO of the Association of Education Advisors. So I'm looking forward to chatting with Les, and that'll be sort of released at the end of the week. But anyway, thank you, Alex. Thank you,
No,
Stan, and
thanks, Ram.
see you all soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks.